Adolf Hitler was born on April 20, 1889, in a small Austrian town called Braunau am Inn. His father, Alois Hitler, worked in customs, a stern and authoritarian man, while his mother, Clara, was gentle, kind, and deeply loving. From these two influences, young Adolf's personality was shaped with contradictions. He was stubborn, defiant, and quick to anger like his father, but also dreamy, sensitive, and imaginative under his mother's care. At school, he was never an excellent student. Teachers considered him rebellious and inattentive. But whenever he held a pencil or brush, something different came alive. He loved to draw landscapes, villages, and grand buildings, nurturing dreams of one day becoming a great painter, admired by all. But dreams are often crushed by harsh reality. Twice he applied to the prestigious Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna. Twice his application was rejected. To him, it was devastating. He felt misunderstood, ignored, and pushed aside. Those rejections carved bitterness in his heart. Vienna became his place of despair. He wandered the streets hungry, often working odd jobs, selling sketches for coins, sometimes sleeping in parks or train stations. Poverty and loneliness consumed him. Slowly, in his thoughts, he began to search for someone to blame. In his bitterness, seeds of anger and hatred began to grow. When the First World War erupted in 1914, Hitler saw an escape. He volunteered to fight for Germany. In uniform, he found purpose. On the front lines, through mud, blood, and endless shelling, he fought with determination. He was injured more than once and was decorated for bravery. The war gave his life structure, discipline, and a sense of belonging he had never known before. Yet, when the war ended in Germany's crushing defeat, Hitler was shattered. The Treaty of Versailles humiliated Germany, stripped it of land, power, and dignity. Hitler took it personally. He believed Germany had been betrayed, stabbed in the back, and he became convinced that Jews and traitors were the ones responsible for this humiliation. His bitterness solidified into obsession. After the war, Hitler drifted to Munich, where political unrest was brewing. There he discovered a small political group, the German Workers' Party. It was insignificant at first, but when Hitler stood to speak, everything changed. His voice was fiery, his passion contagious. He spoke of betrayal, of national pride, of vengeance, and of rebirth. The crowds listened and believed. He was no longer a failed artist or a forgotten soldier. He was becoming a leader. His speeches transformed the party. Soon, he dominated it, renaming it the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazi Party. Hitler's ideology was simple but powerful. He declared that Germany's defeat was due to Jews, that they were behind corruption, capitalism, communism, and betrayal. He spoke of the Aryan race as the true master race, destined to rule. His words ignited anger but also hope. For the broken German people, living through poverty and humiliation, he promised restoration and greatness. In 1923, he attempted to seize power in a coup, the Beer Hall Putsch. It failed, and he was imprisoned. But in prison, he found new opportunity. He wrote a book, setting out his beliefs, his hatred, and his vision for the future of Germany. That book later spread like wildfire, embedding his ideology in the minds of millions. When he was released, he rebuilt his movement with greater determination. As Germany's economy collapsed again in the late 1920s, millions unemployed and desperate, Hitler's popularity soared. To the suffering masses, he seemed a savior. His image was cultivated as the man who could rebuild the nation. In 1933, he became Chancellor of Germany. The failed artist, the rejected student, the soldier of despair, was now the ruler of a great nation. Once in power, Hitler wasted no time. He silenced the press, outlawed opposition, and turned schools into places of indoctrination. Children were taught that Aryans were superior, Jews were dangerous, and loyalty to Hitler was loyalty to Germany. Youth organizations drilled boys like soldiers, preparing them for war. Propaganda painted Hitler as infallible, the voice of destiny. Everywhere, Greetings echoed the same words. Heil Hitler. He revived Germany's economy with massive projects. Highways were built, industries expanded, unemployment declined. People cheered, believing he was their savior. But behind it all, the true purpose was rearmament. He was secretly building one of the most powerful militaries in the world. Tanks, airplanes, and weapons poured out of factories. Germany was preparing for revenge. In 1938, Hitler annexed Austria into Germany without resistance, declaring it the unification of the German people. Then he seized part of Czechoslovakia. Europe's great powers hesitated, hoping to avoid war. But Hitler's ambition had no limits. In 1939, he invaded Poland. Britain and France declared war, and the Second World War began. Hitler's armies moved with terrifying speed. Poland fell in weeks. Denmark and Norway soon followed. Belgium, the Netherlands, and even France collapsed before the Nazi war machine. In June 1940, German soldiers marched proudly into Paris. Hitler stood at the peak of power, master of Europe. Only Britain held out. He launched a campaign to crush them from the air, but Britain endured, and his plan failed. In June 1941, Hitler made the most catastrophic decision of his career. He invaded the Soviet Union. At first, German armies advanced rapidly, capturing vast territories. But the Russian winter, fierce resistance, and endless supply of Soviet soldiers turned the tide. German troops froze, starved, and died in the snow. Then the United States entered the war, and now Hitler faced overwhelming enemies on all sides. Meanwhile, Hitler's darkest legacy unfolded. His hatred of Jews turned into systematic extermination. Across Europe, Jews were stripped of rights, herded into ghettos, and deported to concentration camps. Families were torn apart, children separated from parents. In those camps, millions were murdered in gas chambers, while others died from forced labor, starvation, and disease. 6 million Jews perished in what the world would call the Holocaust. This genocide remains one of the greatest crimes in human history. By 1943, the war was turning against Germany. Allied armies pushed from the west, Soviets from the east. German cities were reduced to rubble by bombings. Civilians starved, soldiers deserted, but Hitler refused to see reality. In his underground bunker in Berlin, he raged at his generals, giving orders to armies that no longer existed. His body weakened, his hands trembled, but his will clung desperately to illusions of victory. By April 1945, Soviet troops surrounded Berlin. The city was burning, collapsing under relentless artillery fire. Inside his bunker, Hitler's world shrank to a few dark rooms filled with despair. On April 29, he married Eva Braun, his companion of many years, in a small ceremony. The next day, knowing the end had come, they chose death over capture. Eva swallowed poison, and Hitler shot himself in the head. Their bodies were burned by loyal followers to prevent them from falling into enemy hands. With Hitler's death, the nightmare ended. Germany surrendered. The war was over, but the cost was staggering. Tens of millions of people were dead. Cities across Europe lay in ruins. Families were destroyed, nations scarred. The world had been plunged into its darkest chapter by the will of one man who rose from rejection and despair, who turned his bitterness into hatred, and who dragged humanity into devastation. Adolf Hitler's story is not one of greatness but of warning. He began as a failed artist and a soldier searching for meaning, but through fanaticism and manipulation, he seized absolute power. His vision was built on hatred, his reign defined by blood, and his legacy is destruction. His end serves as a reminder to all humanity that when power is given to hatred, it consumes not only its enemies but also those who embrace it.